So one thing we're going to want to do before we start working with that map that I've created is we just need to shuffle this result that we've created in the color channels into the alpha. Because if I look at the alpha, it's actually it's like if I go here where we kind of stacked it, the alpha is just solid because we're actually using different colors to stack our effect here. So we just need to go to a shuffle and plug the red or any of these other colors into the alpha channel. And if we look at the alpha, then it's going to match. And that's what our masks are going to use, because we know that by default, if we use a mask, it's going to look at the alpha channel. So now if we're going to move on to start talking about how I did these layers of mist, I'll go through it pretty straightforward, and I think you guys will understand the concept. So we have this kind of alpha here, and essentially what you do is you kind of want to break it up into the visual layers that I did before. So I think I explained this in one of the early lectures, but I'll just re-explain like a really simple version, super fast, about how you want to visualize this scene as multiple planes. So we have a background. We also have, let me grab a different color, this kind of closer background, and then it just continues forward. So we have this area here, and then we have an area here, and finally an area all the way up here. So essentially what we want to do is create masks of each of those areas. So I'll start with the background first, because it's easier to layer from background to foreground, and that's how we always want to layer stuff. So essentially what you do is you take the alpha that we've created, and we can put a grade node and adjust the gamma or the white point or black point. And so I've adjusted the gamma to start with that first plane. So I pushed it way back behind the buildings, and we're going to use that alpha to mask a noise pattern. So essentially this is just some noise patterns. So I added some contrast here by gammaing down a little bit. I added a little bit of blue to it, and then I brightened some of the areas as if there were lights kind of lighting up the fog. And then I just brightened it up and masked that by our new alpha that we've just shifted. So you see that all of these layers here, they're all plugging into that original alpha, but each layer is independently adjusting how far that alpha is cutting away things. So essentially we've cut it to the background, we mask it by some atmosphere, and we put that over the top. And now you see we have some fog, slight fog, just behind all the buildings back there. So our second layer, we do the same thing. So we have our original alpha, we grade that down, but not as far. So if you look at this layer versus this layer, this one is a little bit further, closer to us. So I've just used the gamma. So you just take the gamma and you shift it down into the background area, but not quite as far. And then we mask it by another noise pattern. So we take some noise here, maybe you shift it around a little bit. You can always play with the position, and you can always play with the settings in here. And I've also lit it up a little bit. So I put a rotoshape where that far building is, and I've kind of brightened behind there. So it looks like there's some light casting in the fog that's behind the buildings. And finally mask that off by that new alpha that we just created. So now you see there's some kind of layering happening. We have one that's in the far back, we have one that's a little bit closer, some of it's rolling down into the alley that we've created, and we just merge that over the top. Okay, so that's essentially the technique. So I'll just go through the last one. Same idea, original alpha, push it back. This one's a little bit harsher, so you can adjust the white point and black point if you want to adjust the effect. So because this one's closer to us, I didn't want to fade it all the way back, because then you won't see any of the smoke that's here. So I actually started to move the white point closer to us, so that the whitest point, otherwise known as, we're going to see that 100%, is closer to us. And I've pushed that black point to the middle. So now all the fog that we add on this layer is going to be just in the middle. And of course you can adjust the gamma for the softness of that fall off. And then I masked it by another noise pattern. So all I've done here is that, and then I merged that over the top. And I've done a little bit extra work on this one because it's closer to us. So I did a little bit of a color correction to our noise here. instead of just having plain noise, I had essentially I masked out our ceiling light, or whatever this is, like the building. If we look at the original picture, I just circled out one of these lights here. I luma keyed it, and then I cut it out, and then I glowed that outwards. So we're going to use that. I've done the same thing here. So if I go here, I've circled that light, I've glowed it outwards, and then I blurred it quite a lot. And with these two lights, so I have light 1 and light 2 that I've just kind of isolated, I've put volume rays through them. So we create this really bright volume rays from both of the lights like this. And I've cranked up the ray length in the volume rays. So I've just created that really simple matte and then put a volume rays. I'll just do it real quick so you guys can see. And if I'm viewing that, it looks like this. But then I really increase the ray length to like this huge number, like this massive number, and turn off the radio fall off, and we get this super bright light. And that creates a really cool effect. So we get this like really volumetric, foggy looking light. And with using that, you can mask your noise, and it's going to give us a nice fall off in the noise. So you see how it's like really hot, and we're getting that volumetric kind of cone look falling off into the darkness. So yeah, so the original noise pattern, it was just green, just with a little bit of color correction near the lights, and it just enhances that effect by masking it through some volume kind of effect. So if you guys want to have a closer look at that, that's down here in the depth mist. And you can step frame by frame. I'll delete some of this because that wasn't being used. So you can just kind of step through here and really look at it if you're still confused. But it's pretty straightforward once you understand the concept, which is just adjusting the depth map to different positions and masking it by various noise patterns, and also lighting those noise patterns up by the things that are around it. So because this noise pattern is sort of closer to us, I lit it up by these green lights, but I didn't light these further away ones by those green lights, because that light is not going to affect that noise pattern because it's further away. So you're considering the distance and also the lighting around it. And then this was just another one. I think it's the exact same technique. I just wanted to add a little bit more isolated towards the lower part of the building, so I just rotoscoped it off with just another noise pattern. And that's pretty much it for the first part of layering in a couple layers of fog. And I want to remind you guys, if I go back to this iterations, the first time I did this, it was way too much. So this is like an old version of my comp. You can see it was like too bright, and it just doesn't look good because there's too much. The reason this doesn't look good is because there's too much contrast between bright and dark, and it just looks like your eye goes straight to this really bright point, and the wires were not very good and everything. So that's why that didn't look good. So you see I balanced that out, and then I started to add some more contrast back in later, essentially. So honestly, I'm looking at this now, and maybe it would be even nice if we had a couple more clouds that were like brightened a little bit. So I could obviously go back and improve this further, but I just wanted to show you guys that on your first shot, getting that balance right, it's probably not going to happen. That's something you tweak a lot as a compositor, is the depth hazing. It's something that you have to go back over and over and iterate to make it feel natural, and also have a level of contrast that's visually appealing. But I'm looking at this final image and saying, okay, well, maybe I could even go in here with a noise pattern, merge this over, put some slight blue in there, adjust the gamma a little bit, have a little bit of detail, and then I would mask this off by that depth pass or whatever. But maybe it would be cool if we had a little bit more just detail in this area. You see how it's a little bit flat? We could go in there and just pop some contrast in there. And the thing about noise pattern is you got to be careful. If it's too much like this and you merge it over, it's always going to look flat. So you want to have enough contrast by bringing the gamma down, so that you get distinct cloud shapes in there. Otherwise, it's always just going to look like you're adding something super flat over the top. You want to do that, and you want to add a little bit of contrast to catch some little clouds like this. So maybe that would have been a nice addition. Would be to add some of these layers in here, and something like that. Maybe not so intense, but could have helped maybe. But it's like I said, this is something that can be infinitely improved. And if this was a production shot, I probably would spend another 2 weeks on it or something like that. But I'm just trying to get this out for the class, so hopefully that'll help you out. So we'll move on to the next lesson, which is starting to talk about some mist layers around some of these lamp elements and some other fog elements.